May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer.
Amen.
A stranger, or maybe it was three, walked into town after a long journey. Depending on who is telling the story, maybe they were soldiers or maybe they were simply travelers. But they're looking for food and hospitality before they settle for the night. And in this small town, no one is willing to share their food or invite the strangers into their homes. The strangers decide that they will make soup in the town square. They tell the town that it's no worry that nobody has anything to share. They'll make a soup they have encountered on their travels called stone soup. The townspeople get curious and they come to investigate. And the strangers tell them that the soup is coming along well, but it would be better. Because one place they went, they were able to add onions to the soup. And sure enough, somebody runs home and produces onions for this strange and wonderful soup. This continues for a while. The curious townspeople come to check on this new kind of soup made with water and a stone. The strangers continue to recall that the soup would be just a bit better if somebody had potatoes and carrots and a bit of beef. Until finally, the soup, the water and the stone are ready, and the entire village sits down for a feast, amazed at the wonderful soup that is created from just water and a stone when they had nothing else to share. I can tell some of you have heard this story before. I love this story. I've used it many times, often in stewardship season. But it's also essentially the same story that we hear in today's gospel, except that in the versions of stone soup, whatever version you're hearing, the people in the town had to be convinced through some clever tricks to share what they had in order to share a feast. And sometimes that's how giving works. Giving what we have, especially when it seems inadequate or will only be enough for ourselves, is hard for us. And sometimes, like the disciples did in that deserted mountain on the other side of the sea, we give with bewilderment and a little bit of curiosity, maybe just a dash of skepticism. And once in a while, we give what we have because someone else's giving has inspired our own. The author, Rachel Naomi Remen, learned about different ways of giving from her grandfather, who was an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. He told her that in the Talmud, there are 8 levels of giving described by an ancient rabbi. The teaching goes like this. At the most basic level, a man begrudgingly buys a coat for someone who is cold and asks for help, and gives it to him in the presence of witnesses, and then waits to be thanked. At the next level, the man does the same, but does not wait to be thanked. At the next level, he gives the coat without being asked. And so on, until the purest level of giving, when a man freely gives his own coat without knowing who will receive it, and without the recipient knowing who the giver is. So young Rachel hears this teaching and promises that she will only ever give in the right way. And then her grandfather teaches her the real lesson of the teaching. He asks her, "Suppose we all gave to those around us as the first man did. Would there be more or less suffering in the world?" And Rachel answered, "Less suffering." And her grandfather smiles and says, "Yes, this is true. Some things have so much goodness in them that they are worth doing in any way you can." The townspeople of that folktale may have been manipulated and outwitted, but the village that feared for hunger had enough food to eat that night. The crowd surrounding Jesus on that mountain was fed, even if the disciples didn't really have any idea what had happened and were a little bit grouchy about it in the process. In these stories, we're reminded that God uses what we give, however meager or small or begrudging, and does amazing things over and over again. A phrase I heard this week was that in God's economy, nothing is wasted. The question that our gospel does not answer is this. After the meal was over, and Jesus sends the people home, or runs away from them really, but we assume they all went home, did they hold on to the truth that giving what little we may have can lead to blessing beyond our imagination? Once they, and we, return home from witnessing God's abundance at work and are confronted with the scarcity and the selfishness of the daily world, will we still try and give what we can with what we have? And having seen and known how much a little gift can do, will we dare to give more, knowing that God can do even greater things? We get the chance to answer that question every week. We all know there's great need in the world. I'm not telling you anything you haven't heard. And sometimes the little bit we can offer, a few weekends serving at crossroads, money here and there to rebuild after hurricanes, dig wells for clean water. Sometimes it seems like we have the naivety of a child who will offer a box lunch for 5,000 people. The challenge of this story and of the miracle of feeding the multitudes is to believe that through Christ, what we have and what we are is enough to lessen the suffering in the world. 5 loaves and 2 fish. Just like the box lunch I will pack for my kids' day camp tomorrow, except probably less fish. It was enough to transform a crowd of strangers into friends who were willing to sit down and share a meal in a time and a culture that did not encourage eating strange food with unfamiliar people. As one of our beloved communion hymns reminds us, simple bread and wine are enough to help us find Jesus in this place every single time. And that at this table, as the hymn says, the love that made us makes us one, and strangers now are friends. Each time we are gathered into this place and are witnesses to the transformation of the sacrament, whether we are gone from here again for a day or a week or an unforeseen amount of time, we have the chance to believe that God can do it all over again, to take what we have to give and do more with it than we might ask or imagine. And when the changes and chances of life make that hard to believe and blur the memories of God's abundance in our lives, Sunday will come again and again, and we'll gather here again to remember and practice right here. At this table, where we do exactly what Jesus did on the mountains, we will take an offering of food, we will give thanks, and we will bless it and break it and share it. Simple yet powerful actions that have been done for centuries. So whether you've been away a day or week or countless unforeseen time, the table is set and you are invited. Come to the feast, be thankful, and take God's abundance with you into the world. Amen.